Hello and welcome to the Temple Tanker Tavern. I am Jim. When in New York, done DM&D here on Temple Tanker YouTube channel. Here live on YouTube right now, and so I will warn you, I have had some issues with internet connection right now, so I may stutter. Um, if it does, put something in the chat for me so I know you missed something, and I'll reiterate or go from there. But I know my connection is fluctuating a little bit right now, which is really annoying. But anyway, we are live on YouTube right now. If you have any questions or any comments or want to join in this in the discussion, throw some things in there. We'll give you some time to ask questions and everything else. But today, uh, we the title's a little misleading. We're talking. It's Here we go again, and you'll know why about halfway through. We're talking about initially about using pre-generated content, published adventures, things like that. Um, and it's one of those things that a lot of times when people are first starting off running games, having those sample adventures, having those pre-published things there is a great way to start off in terms of um, jumping into dungeon mastering without having to do an entirely massive amount of world building. The world's already built, the setting's already for you, the plot's there, the characters are there. It's a great way to kind of get your feet wet and kind of get an idea of how to structure a campaign or a set of adventures. And so, published content is a great way to go. And almost every genre of gaming has published content for adventures. They may look a little bit different, and even in D&D, they look a little bit different. You have things like, uh, way back here's the good old White Plume Mountain, good old S2. And these things are super thin, and they got really just basic maps in them and everything. But this is a full adventure to run. It might take one or two sessions to do, depending on how long you're running here. But then D&D, their 25th anniversary, came out with this Return to White Plume Mountain, which has a lot more, has full color maps and a lot more plot involved in the story. So it takes this same setting, this same location, and then fleshes it out in a way with a little more detailed story and everything to go through. And now there's even, I believe, White Plume Mountain was republished again in the Tales from the Yawning Portal. So you have even a more modernized version of the setting. Um, and so you have various things like sometimes in the old D&D modules, there'll be a series. Like we have the classic uh, G1, 2, and 3, the Giant series. Um, and then we have the Slaver series, A1 through 4. And what's fun is the Slaver series, they did an updated version of that with, again, a little more detail, a lot more stuff in it. Um, a lot more details in the story with a lot more plot to go off of here. So, again, you have all these things. And then in other genres, one of my favorite old time module things here, villains and vigilantes for your superhero adventuring. Basically, it's all your superhero type adventures. And the fun thing about these is they actually came with a sheet of flats in the middle you can cut out and use as little tokens for battle maps. And even like Shadowrun. Shadowrun here has a full campaign adventure around a different plot line here. So all this pre-generated content, again, it allows you to jump into the story to a story, to run adventures for your party, for your people, without having to do a ton of world building up front or a ton of extra like story creation. Now, I will warn you, however, just because it's in this book doesn't mean the players are going to follow it. They are often going to go off the rails and go in a different direction or do things you didn't expect. And so I'm going to give you some tips on how to kind of deal with that and how to kind of help yourself with running an adventure that's been pre-published there. And while you can never fully keep them in check, uh, you're going to have a little bit better time of it. Um, First of all, when you first get into one of these adventures like this, just go through it. Read through it. You don't need to read it cover to cover and read every single word here, but at least go through it, looking for the NPCs, the major people they're going to interact with. Look at the locations. Look at the overall like progression of the story, the basic plot. All of these are going to help you sort of get an idea of what's there. So you're not trying to like, oh, who are they talking to? Yeah, it's this first guy. You know what you're doing here. And then as you go through the adventure, you're going to see, oh, this part's coming up next. I need to know what this guy is, what he does. Okay, this is the location, what stuff's in there. Okay, so you can kind of go more detailed as you move through the adventure. Um, and pick up the more specifics there. Again, you don't need to read the entire thing cover to cover all at once, but be ready for the next set of encounters or the next part of the plot. And related to that, focus on the transitions. What takes the characters from one part of the story to the next? If it involves a certain encounter with something, then you need to make sure that encounter happens in some way. And so again, it can be difficult if they just won't take the bait or they won't go where you want them to do. But when you present things in a certain way to the party, they're more likely to follow the thread that you give them because that's where that's the only thing they know in the story. Now, we'll get into some ideas around that in a little bit here. But the idea is that once you know those transitions, you know where the story is going, you can kind of help guide it to that way without saying, no, you can't do that. Go here instead. Just know what the transitions are so you can be aware of what is going to trigger the next event, what's going to help guide them where they need to go next. If it's a certain NPC interaction, if it's a certain bit of a clue they find, or if it's an encounter that takes place that then shows them where to go next. Those are all kind of things there. And sometimes these adventures, I will warn you, may give you a very specific thing that has to happen. When you encounter that, be aware that there may have to be other ways. There may be other things you need to do because they don't take the bait. You have to give them other bait. So that's where you want to kind of read into it, know what's there, and if one transition doesn't work, find a different way. Try maybe plan for two or three. Like, if they don't take this, here's this instead. If they kill this guy off instead of talking to him, well, here's something in his pocket that's going to lead them on the next way to go. Or somebody will call him on his phone, or a messenger will arrive for that person saying, what happened? Well, here, take this." And then he runs away. So whatever it needs to be where the players go, oh, this guy was supposed to go meet with somebody at this place, or oh, this guy was set to do this thing next here. We should go there and check that out. So again, there are ways to progress the plot that don't involve you saying, no, you can't do that. You have to go here instead. Just again, guiding them, heading them the clue, giving them a different way of transitioning from one event to another. One way also to do this is to be really strategic with your descriptions and your dialogue. So I'm going to do this real quick where you have like an encounter, some phrases you can use that are going to set up there. So let's say the party is going to meet with somebody, and this person is going to deliver them information or give them a job or provide them for what they need, or whatever. So if you describe them as having shifty eyes, or wary eyes that are keeping tabs on what's happening around him. Shifty eyes are also already going to say this guy's not trustworthy. Shabby clothes or worn but well kept clothes. Again, both kind of give the idea that this guy isn't a well-to-do person, but shabby versus worn but well kept, again, gives you a different impression of the person. Greasy hair, slicked back greasy hair, or hair pulled back in a ponytail. Basic as opposed to something that's kind of unpleasant in a way. Um, he looks at you with a sneer, looks at you with a warm smile. Again, you're basically setting up what the interaction is going to be with this person based on the description that you provide. If this person is supposed to be someone who's friendly and supposed to be someone who's going to deliver some important information, don't make them an untrustworthy snake. Again, if you can do it, if you, I mean, you don't need to do voice acting, but if their first words out of their mouth is, "Oh, you're here, you're the ones here to talk to the princess, right?" Or, "Oh, good, you're here to talk to the princess." Just same, almost exact same dialogue, but a different way of saying it is going to set things off. And it doesn't take much for your players to go, "I don't trust this guy." And as a DM, you have that sinking feeling of, "Oh crap, they're not going to listen to him. They're just going to kill him. Now what?" because I didn't describe him in a way that's going to make them somewhat trustworthy, they're not going to trust him. They're not going to do what we need to do to make the plot happen. So again, be a little strategic in your descriptions. If you're describing a room, if you describe a room that has an unpleasant smell or sort of unsettling lighting or creaky floorboards or anything else, people are going to be a lot more on edge and wary than if it's a well lit room with the smell of wood polish and musty books. Um, Again, you're going to be a lot more at ill at ease, or you're going to be a lot more like um, on edge in a room that has a musty, weird odor and creaky floorboards and bad lighting than someplace that's more pleasant to be in. So that way you can kind of set up like what do you expect from this encounter or this investigation? Um, and well, it will help. Sometimes it's fun to have a little bit of a twist on things. Maybe that sneering, untrustworthy character in their first meeting kind of sets them off. They don't trust him, but then that person shows up a little later on and warns them of danger or saves one of them from being ambushed. That can be a fun little juxtaposition of expectation to what ends up happening in the story. So, I mean, and yeah, that friendly, very pleasant person there may turn out betraying them in the end. But that can be a fun twist in the story there, and all it takes is setting up a different expectation based on a description to what really ends up happening. So, um, again, these are just ways of taking content that's there and helping to guide them in a way to where you need them to go. And in published adventures, especially, that can be really tricky. A lot of published adventures have like written out descriptions or kind of read me text. Um, I recommend, if you can, paraphrasing that as much as possible. Don't just read it word for word. One thing is really obvious to the players. You're reading a description, so it kind of takes them out of the immersion of the situation of like, hey, there is two chairs and a desk and flickering candles on the wall, and as opposed to when you walk in, you see a desk, a couple of chairs around it there, some candles on the wall are flickering. Use a little more of a conversational tone that isn't just like reading line for line. It's gonna draw them in a little bit more as opposed to, "Oh, you're just reading me a description now. Okay, now can I do something? What's there?" Draw them in with a description and then let them sort of like figure out what they want to check out or do in there. So again, it's those strategic descriptions. It's those ways of just with using published content, especially of making it a little more personalized, making it a little bit less just like I'm reading lines out of a book to you. Um, it kind of masks the fact they're using some sort of published adventure because all of a sudden it's like they're not reading anything. They're not like looking at their notes and okay, and yeah, so this guy is a dwarf who's so just just letting it come out naturally will let the story flow a little bit easier. And it takes practice. It's just the way you deliver, the way you describe things, and the way you bring out bring the story and the setting to life. Um, so, um, lastly, with pregen, you've got to be flexible. I know the books are not always flexible, but occasionally, if something's not working, you might need to draw something out or insert a new encounter in between things, or maybe they just aren't going where you wanted to go, so you want to find another way or another encounter. So be flexible. If they go off in an odd direction there, you may have to be prepared to just tank whatever's there and leave it alone or turn it on its ear. Um, I mean, I mentioned this before in the past there, but Brennan Lee Mulligan has a great story. One of the first times he ran a pre-generated adventure. Party was supposed to go to a big, it was a wedding for a princess, and like the he kind of read what was there, and in the description of things, the party decided, hey, the princess doesn't want to get married, and they decided to kidnap the princess and take her away to take her away, so she wouldn't get in this terrible marriage. Um, Meanwhile, the actual plot was bad guys were supposed to show up and kidnap the princess and take her away, and their job was to find her and rescue her. Well, now they're the one doing the kidnapping. So the whole story has to be turned around to now. Um, I'm now the whole story has to be turned around that they're the ones who are being hunted by the people that they originally were supposed to do the kidnapping. And so it's again, hopefully you don't have something that's that far off the rails, but at the same time, being flexible and thinking, okay, how do I change this around? How do I shift this from one to the other? From one path to another path there and still make it because you don't want to just say, oh, no, you can't do that, or no, it doesn't work, or oh, you just all get killed and that's not very fun. And people aren't going to really be happy with that kind of a situation. So, um, yeah, for example, those of you in the chat there, yeah, what published adventures have you played? And kind of like what's your experience with some of them? Have they been really fun? Have they been sort of like a little bit too railroady? What are some of your experiences? What's been your favorite published adventure you played in? Uh, so yeah, go ahead and throw that in the chat there while we kind of prepare to move on to the next thing here. Anyone out there who's got some stories to tell? Um, I will say my experience with a lot, especially recently, is I will use adventures as some of these publishing as a jumping off point, or I'll pick and choose from them and insert them into various places. Some adventures are very good for that, where you can just take like wholesale storylines. For those of you who played Curse of Strahd, if you like to watch actual plays, a great one is Black Knight Society. B. Dave Walter is the D&D. Um, uh, he's a great DM and he did some amazing things there. But he took the Curse of Strahd story and he did a lot of really cool things with it and brought in incorporated elements from other settings a little bit here and there. And he kind of really made it his own. And I've seen other Curse of Strahd uh, little playthroughs here and there or synopses, and his is definitely unique. I will say. So, you never know what you're going to be into when it comes to these games. Some people just run it strictly by the book. And there and change. Storm King, not fun. Not sure why. It might be. I mean, I think it's one of those things of some of the adventures that are out there. Um, can be a little bit just like linear, just kind of cut and dried. Not a lot of flavor to it. That's why a lot of times these I always look at the published adventures as a step as a baseline. Um uh, oh, that's scary there now. But they're use them as a baseline, kind of a jumping off point there. And if you just follow it just like line by line, page by page, it can be a little dry and not very interesting sometimes. Um, so it all depends on who's running it. All depends on how closely they're following the material. But you never know what you're going to run into. It can also just be from one party to the next. We're about to get into that in just a moment here. But now, yeah, you never played it. Haven't played a published game. Only lived in Nan's brain. Well, um, yes, Lucas ran a campaign that was upgraded for 5e. So, yeah, sometimes you can take an older adventure. Like I said, here's when the Fate of Istis from Greyhawk. This is a full adventure campaign, revolving around the god Istis, the goddess of fate, and some things around there. So this one right here, it'd be interesting to see this updated to modern rules and everything else. But this is a lot of fun. I've in the past used some things from published materials. In fact, um, people who've watched Avarice for a while and have noticed here will notice that good old The Secret of Saltmarsh, that should look a little familiar. This is the house that they and there's the basement and everything. Really, I use this map and this layout for that house. Um, so again, you might just use a map out of it. You might use a set of NPCs. It doesn't have to be I follow this entire story. Um, yeah, and so sticking to the character storyline, no character backstories was still great. Again, it kind of comes down to how well you take the material and develop it and run with it. Sometimes your characters just are fun characters to play, and you get sucked into the story, and off you go with the plot, and then it can work out. Sometimes it's how well is the adventure itself written. Some are written better than others. I will say that, and some are kind of boring. Some are really really fun. So that's another thing to watch out for in those games. Um, so why is this episode called "Here We Go Again"? Well, a lot of times I kind of hinted at this already here, but a lot of times you buy these adventures and you end up running them multiple times for different campaigns, different people, um, different groups. We were just talking before we started up the show here that Uh, someone's running Lost Mines of Fandom where they've run it for 3 times now. I mentioned before a while back, we're talking with my friend Zach, who has his own campaign setting, Pavea, and he's run 3 campaigns in that setting, and it's the same campaign each time. But in both of these cases, the players did wildly different things. The setting is the same, the overall plot is the same, the NPCs are even mostly the same, but the fact is, the players latch on to different things, and the party makeup can change how you do things too. If you have players that are more sneaky and roguelike, they're going to approach the entire adventure differently than people that are playing like paladins and do-gooders. It's really just the party composition alone can completely change how the adventure plays out. And so when you have these things here, like, you can run them again and again and again because you never like first thing, you'll get more familiar with the material. You'll get more familiar with how the whole thing plays out and some variations that you've done in the past that were really good. Um, and uh but you'll see a different outcome each time because the players and the people that are playing and the characters that they're playing can totally change things up here. And so when rerunning content, and the same thing holds true for your campaign settings. If I mean I've told this in the past here that Avarice, my current campaign, uh, I actually ran a shorter, much pain years before in the same elements. But for as well. Um, so when you are rerunning material, when you are doing that, there's first off, reflect on your previous iterations. What went well? What didn't go well? What encounters were really fun? What encounters were sort of or didn't work? And tweak them. You can modify them, add more enemies, take away some enemies, change the types of enemies that are there, change when the encounters take place. You can adjust the plot. You can do anything that you can when you reflect on what you did in the campaign and when you're ready to run it again. Really look at what went well, what didn't go well, what made for a smooth transition, and what made for a bad one. And just kind of analyze what you did well, what you felt you did well, and what things there. Um, but even once you do all that and you make those tweaks and those changes and everything else, understand there's still going to be differences. As we mentioned, um, a different party, different people, things are going to go differently, regardless of whether you change anything or not. Just the players themselves and the characters themselves are going to adjust the plot from one time to the next. Maybe in some small ways, it may be in some absolutely major ways, depending on how they decide to run the game, how they decide they want to run their characters through the plot. Um, and one thing to consider too is if you've run it a couple of times, don't be afraid to switch things up for yourself. If you want to change these goblins to um, some sort of other enemy, maybe from goblins to I mean, kobolds is a fairly minor change or whatever else that, but maybe you turn them from a goblin race to a little miniature werewolf race, or maybe it's more fey enemies than it is undead or anything else like that. So you can change the feel and everything of the game just by changing the types of enemies they encounter. Instead of goblins and wolves, it could be, if you're able to, undead and spiders, or snake men and butterflies. Whatever, you can just literally take anything and tweak it, and that's going to make the whole adventure feel different. You can adjust where the setting is taking place. Instead of a mountain area, maybe it's in a jungle instead of or a snowy area. All those things could just changing the setting, what's around the set pieces around you will adjust how the game feels. And I mean, I've seen it done before where changing it enough makes it feel like an entirely different adventure. Uh, so, uh, so the mad scientist, when the party met the mad scientist, it was a young girl with a cat. Party never quit. This young girl was a super scientist. It was actually- so, yeah, it's like a fun subverting expectations. When you talk about someone as like this powerful wizard, this amazing thing, and it turns out it's a 10-year-old kid, or it's this very meek, um, uh, uh, like this person's supposed to be a very cowardly, um, like person is always is afraid of their own shadow, is how to describe there, and it ends up being an ogre. Any kind of just subverts that expectation can be a lot of fun. And so it might be that, yeah, this whole thing of like in the adventure, you're supposed to go meet with this big hulking barbarian dude, and it's a pixie instead. Um, Still can deliver the same content, still fill the same role in the story, but a very different different encounter entirely. Um, so the, so the scientist was actually one of the players' deity, but left we forget that part of the story. So, yeah, I mean, and sometimes you start a plot, you start an adventure, and it doesn't go as far as you want, or something doesn't work quite right the first time. So you can reuse that in another game. So when you're either rerunning the same game, well, it didn't work last time. Let's try it this time and see if it works out this time. Or if it's a plot element you really like and you're running a different game entirely, you can insert it and just say, "Yep, we're going to go ahead and take that element, that story element that I created over here that didn't work out. I'm going to put it in this story instead and see how that goes." It's this whole being flexible, switching things up, subverting expectations, and there's just fun ways of refreshing a game, refreshing an adventure path you've done a couple of times, um, and and seeing how things go. Um, I mean, if you've ever done this game before, this Secret of Salt Marsh did get a full campaign setting in modern D&D, and they took this basic idea of this haunted house and expanded it out into this massive thing with conspiracies with lizard men in the swamp areas and pirates and all this other stuff here. And it's a much bigger story than just one little thing of some smugglers hiding out in a house doing a full on Scooby Doo aspect of like making the house look haunted. Yes, sorry for spoilers, but that's what it is here. It's a Scooby Doo episode, which is one of the reasons why my one shot was a Scooby Doo episode in this house, um, but with real ghosts. So, so yes, it was a lot of fun doing the Scooby Doo, and even using this in the campaign as well. Again, I took that campaign idea and turned it into a one shot. If you're running a long running adventure, you can take a small snippet of the campaign or a set of encounters there and make a one shot of it. If you're looking for ideas for a one shot, take a one little like section of one little set of encounters there and turn it into a one shot. Take a one shot and expand it out into a um massive campaign that uses that either as a part of the campaign or a kickoff point of the campaign. Um, I will say, just to point it out here, one of my longest running campaigns before my current one here involved these two old modules, the Sentinel and the Gauntlet. Now, the plot of what isn't what's important. What was important in these modules was the location that became the base of operations from the evil campaign that I ran, and these items which were very, very pivotal to their success in their mission. So just taking two little published adventures here and turning it into an entire campaign based on this is the starting point. So you literally can take those elements of um, taking a published adventure and putting it into a homebrew campaign or building it out into a much larger campaign. That's what we have with published. Um, any other content there that people have? I see there's 5 people watching. So, um, what other adventures have you guys run and had fun with? Um, I will say, as I mentioned before, I recently have not been running published content, not for a long time, but for a long time I did. Either running adventures straight out of here, running adventure paths out of things like where is that? The Slavers. I ran an entire campaign. Not a super long run here. It didn't. It ended and before we could finish it here. But as we have one of these little tabs are on this thing here, is I had little sections. Um, Set up there for where things would happen in the book there. So I did a lot of that. Just kind of tagging various parts of the campaign, like, oh, this is important because this is the rules for naval combat. So fun rules for naval combat here. Um, so Nightmare Before Christmas one. Excellent. And so yeah, one shots there based on a theme, based on and maybe it's not published content, or you could take published content and give it an entire like familiar popular pop culture twist. Um, or like I said, taking an adventure and turning it into a Scooby Doo adventure. Um, so very, very fun times. From Drive Through, uh, great resource there. Drive Through RPG, DM's Guild. They have a lot of adventures either for cheap or even free, where you can get a lot of things there. You'll find a lot of things, a lot of third-party content online with a set of published adventures, either full campaign resource books, or even just like one shots or campaign settings to play in, with a lot of ideas for how to run adventures in there. Those are a lot of fun as well. I mean, a great one, if you ever can get a chance here someday. I would love to do this. Is good old Humblewood, where you're all in a forest surrounded by nightmarish fire creatures and everything else. Very, very cute setting. Very, very cool concept with the animal characters. Everyone's playing different animals. Um, Again, full campaign setting. Some ideas in here for adventures, but not really a full campaign in and of itself in here. But you could use this as a basis for a campaign. And so, yeah, again, third party originally had Point Press. It's on D&D Beyond now, but it was independent there, good old Kickstarter. Um, so, and then other genres also have the same thing. You can find published adventures in all the different genres. Um, Yes, Roll20 is a lot of times if you're on Roll20, there'll be published materials there. And one thing really nice about those is you'll actually get all of the maps, all the tokens, all of the NPC stat cards and everything else. Um, that's a really helpful resource there if you're running an online game. If you have the money, and this isn't a plug for these guys here. They don't need it. They don't need it, but I do love it. If you ever wanted to get sort of a deluxe version of some of the D&D published adventures there, Beetle and Grimm's. They produce some amazing collector's items versions of the published settings there, and they'll have like individual like chapters laid out in their own books. They'll have in like full color maps to hand out and use, pictures and tokens and fun things there. They are amazing. It's pricey, but if you have the money and you want to have some really cool stuff to use for a campaign, it's amazing stuff there. I'm always it's one of those ones. If I had way more disposable income and a chance to play in person more, I would definitely be some Beatles and Grimm stuff here because it's really, really fun, cool. Um, you can find a lot of like special maps of things online, or people or player created maps. to go along with certain adventures or artwork that people have used created for inspired by certain characters from adventures. Um, just yeah, go online and just look for images of Strahd sometime. There are so many like fan art things around Strahd and just like, independent creators there. And if you're not worried about copyright infringements or stealing content from people, then um, and you're just using it for your own home games, I highly recommend just like finding really cool artwork and supporting those artists and other creators and everything else. Um, so, yeah, so adventures I've talked a lot in in this channeling about world building, about building your own campaign, but there is a great resource in pre-gen material that I fully recommend, especially for new players or people that just don't want to put the time and effort into the massive amount of time it takes to do world building, to just go in and use published material. It can be a baseline for your game to flesh it out a little bit more, kind of use it as a skeleton framework for your games, or you can just run it. Strixhaven's a great one here. There's a whole campaign around Strixhaven. There's like full campaigns for Shadowrun. You can find both online and in published material. Um, and whatever you can find through third party content like creators like DM's Guild or RPG drive through RPG. I mean, so um, lots of fun resources out there. Lots of great places to get stuff here. Um, uh, so I will say if the question's asked to me, uh, published content, what's your favorite? Well, I'm going to give you a hint. It's basically this entire like first quarter of my shelf. A new DMG. It was the primary in 3.5. It was the primary setting used for the default setting for D&D back in the 3.3.0 3.5 days. Then they moved to Forgotten Realms, um, and now they're back to Greyhawk in the DMG, which I just love. But yeah, I mean, it's a really fleshed out, detailed world. The city of Greyhawk has got so much content around it, and I've used it in so many different ways, so it's a lot of fun. Um, and I noticed my picture has gone away and my chat has gone away. Is that really happening?
Second. Nope, you're still there.
Okay, it just went blank for a bit. Weird. Okay,
Okay.
interesting. So yeah, we'll look on the stream. It's not there. Anyway, sorry about that. We disappeared for a second. I think we'll pop back up here in just a moment. But yeah, I would say yeah. I mean, and if you're a fan of Forgotten Realms, then there's so much content for that. Uh, and then there's content of a lot of other things. I mean, Curse of Strahd is based off the old Ravenloft setting from D&D back in the AD&D days. So really, all of these different like published content is a great rich resource for playing games, for running games for folks here. That doesn't involve you having to build everything out from scratch. Um, so I hope that kind of helps with some ideas for those of you who don't want to dive into the time sink and uh, the time sink that is world building. Um, using pre-generated published content is a great resource. And there's nothing wrong with it as a DM as your players are going to love it no matter what. Because I mean, the idea is how much it's all about story, characters, and playing in a published material, or if that comes from your own brain and your own imagination, it's still going to be a good time. And yeah, you'll see the DM's Guild link there is in the chat. Excellent, good job there, Double Tinkered. And but yeah, with that, we're gonna go ahead and wrap things up. I think. If anyone else has any questions here, feel free to throw them in um, as we wrap things up. But Yeah, as always, thanks for being here and hanging out. I hope you got some good information from this. Those of you watching now and in the future, if you can, throw a like down for us and tell your friends about it. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you're aware when we're doing more of these and when we're doing other fun content on the channel itself. But as always, we love to have you here, have you being. If you have ideas, as I said before, if you have ideas for future episodes, or you have just questions or comments you want to add in the comment section of the video, go right ahead and throw them out there. If you want to hop in the Tumble Taker itself and give us some suggestions there, or just hang out and chat, we're always happy to have more folks join us in the tavern. But for that, we'll call it things for today. Thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging out. Um, we'll see you again soon. Drinks are on us, and let's have some fun. Okay. Bye, everybody.